Hello, hello. Happy Friday, guys. I hope you're doing well today. I'm ready to get into it with you all regarding Pisces and everything it's known for on an esoteric level. So let me prep here and we can begin the show. Um, Pisces is a really interesting sign for a lot of different reasons. It's obviously the last sign of the zodiac, and many people say it encompasses all of the signs because of that. So, because it represents a completion, some people think that it, essentially is emblematic of everything that preceded it. And that makes it really tricky, actually, to decode in some ways and break down because it means so many different things. But hopefully, I'm going to help you out here and fill you in on kind of what I see within Pisces symbolism, some of the various myths that are associated with Pisces, I find to be very interesting. Also, we'll be diving into fish symbolism. The actual sigil of Pisces, I think, is really fascinating too. So, we are absolutely going to talk about that for a bit. As you can see here in this graphic, right? I mean, Pisces fits snugly within a Taurus field. And I think that this is like a beautiful representation of the toroidal nature of life and of all of the different things that basically are patterned off of this Taurus field, which I'm assuming probably a lot of people here or who are going to watch this know a little bit about toroidal symbolism, but we'll be getting into that as well. So I'm also trying a new setup here, holding the mic. It's I don't know, it feels more casual and comfortable in a lot of ways, and so I like the fact that I can kind of move around and all of that. So I've been doing that on another show lately, and I like it. So here we are. If you're joining me live, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you're new here, thank you. My name is Mario. I don't know if I said that. My name is Mario, the guy behind Symbolic Studies. Um, I'm trying to go live, once a week, once every 2 weeks, something like that, on this channel. So if you like kind of what I'm putting out there, subscribe and stay tuned for what's next. But without further ado, let's get into it here regarding Pisces symbolism because I have a lot of slides as usual, and there is a ton to get into. So let's start off with some of the basics. So this is actually just a screenshot of my elemental study packet. So in case you're unaware, I have a 4-page elemental study packet, and each page represents a different element. So I have a page for water, fire, air, earth, and on each page, I also have correspondences for the signs that fall underneath those elements. So this is just the small section for Pisces, right? So here you can see the symbol for Pisces, and then you can see that Pisces corresponds with the fish, or it's really common to see the fishes. To me, that sounds really weird. So I can't even almost say that regularly. So I just say the fish. So it represents two fish. It is the last sign of the season of winter, right? It's mutable, which means that it's liable to change. So all of the mutable signs, it's really interesting because they all are just before a cardinal sign. And so there is this the mutability, right, with all of those signs. It feels as though they're about to morph into something else. That time or the seasons or the signs are about to change. So mutability with Pisces makes a ton of sense. The planets that are associated with Pisces are Jupiter and Neptune. So the traditional correspondence would be Jupiter. The newer correspondence would be Neptune. Personally, where I'm at with everything, I tend to follow the traditional system, the seven planetary system of old. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes sense too to know basically both systems, which is why I include it here in the study packet. But Jupiter is generally what I think about personally. And then you can see there that Venus is exalted in Pisces. And this is really interesting because one line of myths associated with Pisces has to do with Venus and Cupid actually being the two fish that you see in the night sky. So, just very briefly, the story goes is that Venus and Cupid were walking down a river on the bank, and Typhon showed up, a terrible monster, scared them, and they were turned into fish and jumped into the river to save themselves. Or the other version of the myth goes is that two fish came from the river to rescue them. But there is this belief that Venus and Cupid are actually the two fish that you see in the night sky, which is interesting. Mercury is considered to be in a detrimental state within Pisces. And then the polarity of Pisces is Virgo. So that's really interesting too. We'll be talking about Virgo symbolism because of this. And if you guys have heard me talk before, you know that I'm a big fan of acknowledging the polarity of each sign. So the sign that sits opposite on the zodiac wheel. Once you start studying astrology and the zodiac that way, so many amazing secrets come to life. And so Pisces is no different with Virgo. So we will be talking a bit about Virgo later on in the presentation. There you can see the tropical and sidereal dates for Pisces. It's the 12th house. It's the last sign. So generally this house corresponds with spirituality and endings. Body part. It is the feet. It corresponds with the feet, which we'll be diving into a little bit here, which is actually such a perfect fit. Oh my God. I love this correspondence with the body part because there's two fish, obviously, in the constellation, and then we each have 2 feet. And a lot of Pisces symbolism has to do with a split stream sort of concept or idea. 2 streams coming from one stream. That reminds me a lot of our feet. It reminds me a lot of our legs, right? And so it's a split stream in a way because obviously our legs come together with our body. So I think that's intriguing. Also, too, real quick regarding that, it just means too that Pisces is deeply connected with our roots symbolically, spiritually, where we come from as humans. It speaks to the power of water and how integral water is to our to our existence. And so it says a lot of things in a very, very simple sort of way. But suffice it to say, Pisces absolutely corresponds with the feet, makes a lot of sense. And then Aries, the next sign, corresponds with the head, right? So the mantra for Pisces is I believe, which I think is very, very interesting for a few different reasons. And then the tarot card that traditionally corresponds with the sign is the moon card, which is the 18th card. And actually, there's a bit of debate out there regarding the true major arcana card that corresponds with Pisces. And so I will be weighing in on that. The other card people say that makes more sense to be associated with the sign is the Hanged Man. And at first, it may not seem like that's the case, but it does make sense once you start breaking it down. If you're into the cell salt thing, iron phosphate is the cell salt that corresponds with Pisces. But here it is, right? So here's the symbol for Pisces. As I was saying, it is toroidal in nature through and through. And you can see there that vertical line. It might look a little faint, but that vertical line, it has a little label on it. It says axis of symmetry. The toroid can be seen all over the place. And we are toroidal in nature. I'll be showing you some slides that gets into that. Trees and a lot of wildlife. You just start seeing the toroidal pattern all over the place in the natural world. And what this system is, what it looks like It looks like a donut, basically. It looks like a bagel. And so you can imagine one side is basically unfurling energy, energy's coming out, and then the other side, the energy's being sucked back in. And so one side is projective, and then the other side is receptive. And that's kind of like, I mean, just if you look at a tree as an example, you can imagine that that line in the middle might be literally just the ground. And then there's a trunk that shoots up, and then the branches kind of unfurl outward. And then similarly, down below, you have roots within the soil underneath the earth, and then those roots kind of fan out. And it almost looks like the tips of the tree, of the branches up top, and the roots down below. It almost looks like they want to connect to each other in a lot of ways. And so when I see toroidal symbolism, I immediately think of the tree of life, the world tree. And I'll show you some slides here in a second that kind of gets into that. But this is showing you the properties of a magnet. And so magnetism, electromagnetism, polarity, you would you would be better off understanding the nature of the toroid if you're going to be working with electromagnetic technology. Obviously, electricity, you have to have an understanding of polarity. Magnetism, you have to have an understanding of polarity. And so if you just removed this Pisces symbol, you can see it looks like it's a magnet. And so when we're talking about the toroid, we're literally talking about kind of like the nuts and bolts of what creation looks like, of how creation functions. And I would argue it is very much in line with basically our actual reality, like the actual world or earth that we live within. We live in a toroidal structure. And so, again, I keep on saying this, but I'll show you some slides here in a second that's going to get into that. But this posted really well when I posted it last year and this year. And so you can see kind of this Piscean sort of symbol all over the place once you start looking for it. But I think one of the best examples of it, where it's just very, very obvious and kind of in your face, is, and speaking of face, it's in the face of this owl. This is the gray owl. And you can see that it has the Piscean symbol, the glyph, basically like right there on its head. And I made another slide here, right there. That's what I posted recently on Instagram and elsewhere. But it's just the Pisces symbol fits very snugly within the shape of its head, right? And actually, the shape of its head, clearly, it's not for just nothing. But the reason why it looks like this, I recently learned, is that it actually is receiving sound. And so it has a built-in, this owl has a built-in sonar capacity to hunt prey. And so it has these two discs on the side of its head because it can pick up sound, and it's using the fine feathers around its eye to basically locate where its prey is. And then I believe its ears are just below its eyes, if I'm not mistaken, or around the eye somewhere. So between its eyes and its ears, it's picking up on this subtle frequency if if a critter is making a sound or whatever, and it's able to I believe, is it called biolocation? It's able to locate where that animal is. And so the design of the toroid, there are many applications for it, in my opinion. And here, when I made this and when it fit so snugly in there, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Just because, right? I mean, the line that connects the other lines just fall right within the center of its eyes. And I just think that's kind of a pretty cool synchronicity, pretty cool design. And this shape, by the way, the Pisces symbol, the Pisces glyph, as though it's not pretty obvious, I would think, for most people, but those two curves are supposed to represent fish. And so that line right there in the middle, it implies some sort of connection between the fish. And this is actually part of the constellation itself, which we will see here in a little bit. And this is just another awesome photo of that owl. And I was geeking out on owl photos, guys, for like an hour the other night. And I just, when I see these guys, it really blows me away, man. I mean, they are spiritual creatures. They look like they have personalities. A lot of them look like they're kind of like sages or old men or something. They look like they're shamans. They look like travelers. They look very, very wise, which is obviously a common thing to associate with owls. But I just love this photo. Yeah, they're so cool. And so there's a belief or an understanding that we are toroidal in nature. So this is an Alex Gray series right here, but you can see in the first image he's showing our chakra system, and then he's showing more of our toroidal nature in the second image, and then in the third image it's all toroid. So most people's understanding of our toroid usually centers around the heart, and that our heart is toroidal in nature, and that the toroid itself, you know, its design, what it does, its function, it is like a generator of sorts, I guess you can say. So for it to be associated with the heart, or for a lot of people to believe that the heart is the center of our toroid, I think makes a lot of sense. But I recently came across some information, thanks to a friend, that suggests that maybe we have a vertical toroidal system and a horizontal toroidal system, which to me, I just think is really, really fascinating, right? But suffice it to say that there are a number of people out there, researchers, authors, spiritual people, and whatnot, that make a direct connection with the torus field of life, and how we're designed, perhaps on a more sort of metaphysical kind of level. But the toroid is so simple because, like I was saying, there is a part that's receptive and there's a part that's projective. And even if you just look at the most basic animal on Earth, like a worm or something, or like a sea cucumber, food goes in and then it goes through their system, and then food goes out once it's processed and digested, right? That is kind of like a torus field. So when I see the serpent, when I see really basic animals like that, I tend to think of that. And even with humans, food goes in, goes through the system, then it comes out. It's not unlike a toroidal system in a lot of ways, in that there's a receptive part and a projective part, something that receives and then something that kind of gives. And so that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're decoding the symbolism of the torus field, in my opinion. And we're not even going to get into it in this presentation, but isn't it interesting that the torus field is named the torus field, and then we also have the Taurus constellation? And so I think that's fascinating. It reminds me of symbolism related to the bull of heaven and a bunch of other stuff, but it's definitely related. I'll just say that much for sure. So this would be a representation of the torus field, our potentially our vertical torus field, and this is an artistic rendering, obviously. And so there's different ways of illustrating it, but I do just like how I like how Alex Gray decided to render it here. But this is another way of looking at the torus field, is that it's actually more horizontal, and it projects from our chest area or our heart area. And where the torus field, where the line is, what was referred to earlier as the, I believe, line of symmetry or axis of symmetry, it's horizontal instead of it being vertical. And so the line between the two sections of the torus field, where the hyperbola is, here is referred to as the assemblage point. And notice too that the torus field itself, or our aura, a lot of times is shown as being egg-like in nature. And so we are definitely we're like products of a world egg, honestly. Egg symbolism goes super deep. There's a lot of egg symbolism that's kind of sneaky with Pisces, actually. But when most people acknowledge kind of our energetic body or our aura, like I was saying, um, I think the consensus for most people is that that its exterior is very egg-like in shape, or circular, or toroidal. Um, Essentially, I think we're kind of talking about the same thing, in my opinion. So this is one way to interpret our own personal toroidal field. And then here's just another slide that I got to show you guys what's going on there. Again, very, very egg-like. So what does it say here? The human energy field and man's assemblage point. Assemblage point, there it is. The vortex of the energy field is called the assemblage point. The position shown is the location and alignment for optimum mental and physical health, organ and glandular synergy. Yeah, so my understanding is that your assemblage point, it could be hacked into, it could be moved, all sorts of different things. You can have leaks. You could be, yeah, you could have energetic leaks essentially. And so, once again, the torus field and symbolism in general, guys, this is one thing that I've really come to appreciate over time is that if you're looking at one symbol, just say vertically, um, and then you see another symbol that looks exactly the same, but it's say horizontal, it's the same thing. It's really it boils down to it being the same thing. So I talk a lot about the world axis and it being vertical, but if there's just a horizontal symbol that looks very much similar, it's really you're talking about the same thing. So in the world of symbolism, no matter how you rotate it or turn it or whatever angle you might be looking at it, a lot of the times the symbolism is actually very much intact. And so that's what I've come to kind of find out over time, at least. And shout out to Christy, who turned me on to this assemblage point business and the nature of our potential horizontal torus field that we have. So I'm kind of inclined to think that we might have two torus fields, a vertical and then a horizontal one. And I mentioned this on a show last night, and my buddy Ben Balderson was saying that I believe, I don't want to misquote him, but that one torus field might be electric in nature and the other one might be magnetic in nature. And as I was saying earlier, electromagnetism, electricity and magnetism, both operate with polarities and have a strong connection to the torus field and how it functions. Right. So this is just to show you guys just what I was saying earlier about the projective nature, the circular nature. But then also, I just wanted to highlight this line for a moment and talk about that briefly. And so it's really interesting because we live in a toroidal system, in my opinion, a nested toroidal system. And there is a torus field around Earth called the magnetosphere. And so it is a magnetic torus field, and the opening of the torus field is at the north, which I think is really interesting. And so this gets into my line of research about there being literally a stairway to heaven at the north. A lot of groups basically have passed down information saying that we come from the north and return to the north, and that our soul's journey upon death goes to the northern sky. And there's all this stuff about Polaris, the North Star, the North Pole, and some of the northern circumpolar constellations. But it's my opinion personally that the cosmological model that we were taught in public school of this spherical ball, I don't think that's accurate. And so when you look at a torus field, or you're looking at the symbol for Pisces, and you see that horizontal line, it represents a number of things. On one level, it represents the cord or the ribbon or the the rope that connects the two fish of Pisces. And on a grander sort of scale, if we're talking about the torus field of Earth, that horizontal line literally represents what's called the plane of inertia, and that is the plane we live on. That is symbolic of Earth. That line right there, within the torus field, because if we live in a gigantic toroidal structure, Earth is right in the middle of this system, and that line represents that, which I think is really fascinating and very, very interesting for a lot of different reasons. You can kind of see the toroidal nature here in this world tree. This is Yggdrasil. You can notably see that there is a trunk, or there is a through line from top to bottom. This is part of the toroidal nature of everything. When you look at a torus field, you're going to see that there's an opening or a gateway of sorts in the middle of the torus field. And when you're dealing with Yggdrasil or world trees in general, you're talking about a system or a structure or a tree symbolically that goes from the heavens down to the underworld, right? This would be like its roots. And so this is this is an artistic expression, obviously. But to me, I see personally the toroidal structure of this system. And so that line, like I was saying, would be Earth itself, right? The plane of inertia, the plane on which we live. And there is a sacred center to this plane. In my opinion, it exists at the north. And when you're getting into northern symbolism or sacred center symbolism, it's not uncommon to come across the idea that there is a sacred mountain at the north. Oftentimes, it's called Mount Meru, and this mountain is symbolic of transcendence. It's symbolic of a lot of different things. But climbing a mountain, as an example, you're trying to get close to the heavens. You're trying to get close to God. You're trying to ascend, essentially, physically, and then therefore there's a symbolic ascension as well. And so this central point, this central axis, is kind of symbolic of the bridge from upper to lower, as above, so below. That's kind of the opening in between the Pisces symbol, essentially, is the way I tend to look at it. And as I was saying earlier, the tree definitely corresponds with the torus field in a number of ways, for sure. And even just, looking at tornadoes and stuff like that, right? You can kind of see the toroidal nature of a tornado. When you're dealing with the torus field, you're dealing with a twisting sort of dynamic. And you can see that the funnel shape of the tornado is basically kind of symbolically not unlike the tree that I just showed, or the center point of the torus field, right? And then you can see above there's even like this cusp or opening at the top of the tornado, the same way that there's a cusp or opening at the top of the torus field. So this is supposedly I guess it would be I know it's just a rendering, right? But this is supposedly what the magnetic field of Earth looks like. And this is just a screenshot from a video that I have used a couple of times in other presentations and things like that. But that ball in the middle, symbolically, it's supposed to be Earth. And I have a different cosmology. But I think it's interesting that this is even out there as like a scientific sort of proof of what our magnetic field looks like. And what does it look like? It looks like a torus field, right? And so that bunch up top in the middle, that's the opening of the northern torus cusp. And so this is why we have the northern lights. This is why we have the aurora borealis. That phenomenon is a direct result of the opening of Earth's magnetosphere, which just kind of blows my mind. I think that is really, really interesting. And as you guys probably know, but there are so many mysteries regarding the poles. And that's just something I like to geek out on personally. So when I'm saying that that line is Earth, it's not under this sort of it's not under this sort of construct. It's under a different construct. But if you're looking at it through this lens, you can see that the equator line would be that line within the torus field. Here you can see the torus field within an apple, right? There's a lot of occult groups that have said that there are mysteries within the apple, and all you have to do is cut an apple in half and study it, and you will learn a lot of stuff. And in a lot of ways, I'm thinking, are they just talking about toroidal symbolism? Because just look at it. It pinches up top, it pinches down below, and then you have this kind of like through line in the middle with the stem. And so, again, once you start paying attention to it, you'll see the torus field all over the place. And some of it, sometimes you have to use your imagination a little bit, but it's totally there. And there's a reason why the apple is designed as such. There's a reason why all of our food looks the way it does, why Mother Nature does what it does. A lot of it is an expression of the original torus field, in my opinion. All right, so moving on a little bit. So, one of the things I wanted to mention is the fact that we all know, as I've already said, that Pisces is at the end of the line when it comes to the astrological year, right? And there have been different beliefs, by the way, of what the first and last sign is. So, as an example, I was following a thread that was saying that Virgo, which is interesting, right? Because Pisces is opposite Virgo. But there's a line of thinking, and this is an Egyptian thing, that Virgo was actually the first sign and was revered as such. And Leo was considered the last sign. And so there's different traditions, there's different ways of interpreting all of this stuff. And so where I personally am at generally, I generally just want to know all of the different systems. I want to know all of the different correspondences, and I want to make up kind of my own mind, or just at the very least, just entertain them. And maybe some will stick, maybe others will kind of sprout and unfurl years down the line, and I'll start making sense of it, down the road. But Pisces generally is considered the last sign of the astrological year. And this is interesting because preceding Pisces is Aquarius and Capricorn. Now, Capricorn is an earth sign, but it's the sea goat. And so there's a watery sort of aspect to Capricorn that is undeniable, right? These are the three signs of winter. If you look at the astrological year, if you look at the 12 signs, it skews towards water. It skews towards water symbolism. And it really becomes obvious when you start looking at the last three signs. So, as I was saying, Capricorn is an earth sign, but it's the sea goat. So, even the first part of the Capricorn glyph here, that's supposed to be symbolic of the goat. It's symbolic of earth. People have said that it's like the beard of a goat, or the goatee of a goat, excuse me, or the hoof of a goat. Some people think that it's actually just like an arrow drawing your eye down towards the earth, because goats are very earthy. Capricorn is very earthy. And then the second part of the glyph for Capricorn is this kind of S-like shape. And so this is kind of understood as the fish part of the sea goat. So the left side would be the goat part, the right side would be the fish part, or the oceanic watery part. And it even looks more, right? It's more curvy, it's more feminine, it's kind of serpentine a little bit. But it's alluding to this bridge between earth and water, which is basically Capricorn symbolism, Capricorn mythology. You're seeing that convergence between earth and water. And a lot of its stories, a lot of the stories associated with Capricorn definitely say as much. So, although it's an earth sign, there's a lot of water symbolism to be had with Capricorn. And then with Aquarius, it's interesting because Aquarius is a air sign, but it's known as the water bearer. And its glyph literally is just showing like waves. And so it's a watery glyph. So, although it's an air sign, it's the water bearer. And you're always going to see Aquarius being depicted with pots or urns or something along those lines, pouring water, right? And the deep encode with Aquarius is that the urn or the chalice or cup or vase of Aquarius, it contains so many different things symbolically, from ether to electricity, um, energy, frequency, um, all of these different things, but of course, including water, right? And so Aquarius is known as the water bearer, not just for these two signs that it's sitting next to, not just for Capricorn, the sea goat, and Pisces, the fish, but Aquarius is actually the water bearer for all of the signs that surround it in the night sky, where it's located. Because when you're looking at this portion of the night sky, you are looking at the celestial ocean. And so this portion of the sky is very watery. And so there are watery creatures and fish and monsters and things like that. And so it would make sense that in the watery location of the sky that we would need a water bearer, that we would need a constellation that kind of symbolizes where all of this water came from, the ocean water, and so of the celestial ocean. And so that is Capricorn, excuse me, that is Aquarius's role, is being the bearer of the celestial waters. Okay. And so that is something that needs to be understood. And I think that it makes sense that Pisces and all of its watery nature, in part, has to do with the fact that it's right next to Aquarius. And so by the time we get to Pisces, we've already gone through two other signs. While although they're not exactly water signs, they have watery symbolism like very closely attached to them. And so by the time we get to Pisces, we are like in the depths, you know? We are like it's just it's very it just reminds me of the bottom of the ocean, honestly. It reminds me of a lot of movies that take place kind of underwater. And all of the different things that happen underwater and how vulnerable us humans are underwater, and how the underwater world is basically, it's like exotic to us. You might as well be going to a different planet or something. And so we already just went through two signs that were watery in nature. Then we get to Pisces. And so it's like it's time. Not only are we like in the depths, but we're also, it's time to change. And we will be changing here pretty soon with Aries and with that cardinal fire energy. And so I kind of look at it like it's almost like a dissension into the watery depths to be pulled out or yanked out during Aries, during the first sign of spring. And so I think that's mostly what I wanted to say. But Aquarius also, too, there are definitely instances where Aquarius is pouring two streams. And so it just reminds me of the two streams that tend to get associated with Pisces, which you guys will see here in a second. Also, last thing actually, regarding Aquarius. So Aquarius is also heavily associated with flood symbolism. And there is a belief that literally the Great Flood, that a lot of cultures have talked about in their myths, that the water literally came from Aquarius, and or it came during an Aquarian time of the year or during an Aquarian cycle of some sort. So Aquarius is absolutely related to the floodwaters as well. And so here's one of my favorite artists and his depiction of Pisces. And so this artist's name is Jofra Boschart. If you have not seen his series, I suggest you check it out because it is killer. It's so good. I mean, he was a badass symbologist, a badass painter, and his series on the signs is gorgeous. And so here, where are we? We're at the bottom of the ocean, and then you can see the two fish, and the two fish there are corded together, right? And so you can see the Jupiter Neptune influence with the figure there, right? And I just even love the color palette. And so you could see the sigils in the corners there as well. That corresponds with what I just said. And let's take a closer look, though. What's going on in there? So you see the two fish. I love the fact that he included a blue fish, and then I love the fact that he included a warmer fish, an orangey sort of reddish fish. And so to me, this gets into this polar sort of dynamic of things, polarity basically, projection, reception. I know Santos Bonacci. He's well known for saying red shift, blue shift when it comes to the torus field. And so he is depicting that right there. A warm color and then a cool color, and this cyclical sort of nature, because when we're at Pisces, because it's the end of the line of the astrological year, things are about to start over again. So we're about to enter into a new year, right? And so there's this constant movement that comes with Pisces, in my opinion, because of this nature. And so in a lot of ways, it reminds me exactly of the yin yang symbol, basically, right? The black and the white, and this constant churning, this constant turning, which to me is just symbolic of the turning of the cosmos, or the turning of the heavens, or the perpetual motion of the torus field. I think this is another way of expressing it, basically. But notice that there is this ribbon going from mouth to mouth, and on the ribbon, there are 12 dots of light. And so, no doubt, this is symbolic of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And no doubt, this is symbolic of the fact that this is the 12th sign of the zodiac, if you're using the traditional sort of interpretation. So I just thought that was a awesome detail that he included in there. And then, just with the figure, one hand is above, one hand is below. And then, yeah, just everything. Even the eyes are inverted. The blue fish's eye is warm, and then the orange fish's eye is blue. And so, as I was saying, Pisces corresponds with the feet. So, this is the traditional layout of the signs over a human body. And you can see that there's a ram up top, very symbolic of the head. The ram obviously has those horns. And so, everything about the ram is headstrong. And then you go all the way down the human body. And then at long last, at the very bottom, you see two fish. And here she is standing on the two fish. I think it's interesting, too, that Pisces, in some cultures, the older interpretation of Pisces basically was referred to as the tails, which makes a lot of sense, too. Tail symbolism and feet symbolism, they're kind of related in certain ways, because the idea is that what I've read before is that the head leads the way and the feet trail behind, even trail and tail. You just remove the R and you have tail. And so the tail kind of trails behind as well, right? And also, fish have tails. And so that would be symbolically on the fish itself, its lowest aspect would be its tail, the same way our lowest aspect symbolically would be our feet, at least when you're looking at this sort of diagram. And again, as I was saying earlier, there's this idea that the fish of Pisces are connected, either via this horizontal line within the Pisces glyph, or via the ribbon or the rope that connects the two fish, or when you're looking at it through this lens, through our legs being joined at the body. There it is, closer up version. There you could see in between the two fish, just above it, you can see the water bearer, right? Aquarius, pouring the water for the fish. And I was looking at fish video, actually. I like to do this. So when I get into any sign, during Taurus or whatever, I'm looking at cows and bulls do their thing. During Aries, I'm looking at rams fighting each other. And so I was looking at fish footage yesterday or the day before. And what do they do? What do fish do? They swim. That's like all they can do. They swim and they eat. And so it's interesting because how do we get around in this reality with our feet? And so I just think it's interesting that there is a mobility thing going on with our feet. It's been said that our feet are our wheels. Our legs are our wheels. It's how we get around. And so the fact that fish do what they do, they just swim around all the time and they're always in water and they're associated with our feet, which is how we get around, I just think makes a lot of sense personally. Right. So here we are with a traditional illustration of Pisces. Notice that the constellation is a big V. And so there's several big V's out there in the night sky if you're looking for it. The other one that comes to mind immediately is the V in the Taurus constellation. And so you have this big V, and the V, just in and of itself, V symbolism actually is every letter you can decode and break down, right? But V symbolism actually has a lot to do with Virgo, the Virgin, veil symbolism. And so, and also has to do with the Roman numeral 5 as well, right? But the V, just looking at the V, the expression of the V, what is it? It's one point that splits off into 2 points, right? It splits off into 2 streams, if you will, or 2 lines, right? There's a triangular sort of thing going on there. And here, the way it's represented, that V, it's represented with a cord. So sometimes the cord is going from the mouths of the fish to each other, and sometimes they're just wrapped around their tails like they are here. And so that V, it's showing the one splitting into 2, right? And so it's the monad becoming 2, right? And so this is really interesting because a lot of the symbolism associated with Pisces, as I was saying earlier, has to do with this split stream sort of concept. And so here you're just seeing kind of like another representation of the split stream, at least symbolically, right? With this ribbon or this cord that actually binds these 2 fish together. In a way, it almost kind of reminds me of Gemini symbolism too, because Gemini symbolism, you're always dealing with the twins. You usually have like a good twin and an evil twin, but they are bonded together. They are bound together in so many different ways. And so to me, this is kind of like a more watery sort of interpretation of some of that symbolism. I'm not saying it's an exact one-to-one sort of thing, but it's this idea that, these twins, they're brothers oftentimes. And well, right, that would make sense. There are female twin myths out there, but this is just getting into hero twin symbolism, basically. But the idea is that they were in the womb together. They have a common mother, and sometimes they're born out of a cosmic egg. That's another thing that could be worth unpacking a little bit more during this presentation. But that the twins were born of a egg or of a cosmic egg. They hatched or were born, and then one twin went this way, became really good, always did good deeds, had a good head on his shoulders. And then the other twin went like the exact opposite direction and became really evil and sinister and dark and everything. And I think that's interesting for a lot of different reasons. But generally what happens is that the evil twin kills the good twin. And that's kind of when everything comes to a head in a way. But no doubt, these 2 fish, they represent duality. They represent polarity. One is going this way, the other is going that way. If I'm not mistaken, they are literally referred to as like the northern and southern fish, right? So here's another example of these fish, right? Being corded and bound to each other via this ribbon. Um, and so one of the things that's really interesting that's going to be way more apparent in the next slide is that there is a square. The square of Pegasus exists and sits very snugly within this V shape of the fish and the cord. There it is. So Pegasus is upside down. And so that's something that I don't know why I think it's interesting, but I've always noticed that. It's hard to not notice that. But Pegasus, from our perspective, when you're looking at it like this, the constellation is upside down. And when you look at these two constellations in the night sky, the square that's right in the middle of Pegasus, the body of Pegasus, is really apparent actually. And then also the V of Pisces is very apparent. So when you look at it in the night sky, you will see this dynamic, the V with the square in the middle. Well, it turns out that there's actually a lot of symbolism related to this square being a field. It was once known as a field. And I just think it's interesting because I've been talking about the torus field, right? And this field was kind of looked at as like a paradise or like a Garden of Eden, or there's like a lot of symbolism suggesting that this is a place of origin. Like this is where humanity started, is this symbolic field that exists literally within the V of Pisces. So here's another interpretation of it. So this comes from a book called Babylonian Star Lore by Gavin White, and it looks kind of weird because he's overlaying an older understood constellation and a newer constellation. So what he was saying is that back in the day, according to the Sumerians, that they did not see two fish, but actually what they saw was one fish and one swallow. And then that square in the middle is this field, right? And so what he's showing you is that their interpretation of the constellation is very similar to the modern sort of interpretation that we have. But instead of it being two fish, it was a fish and a swallow, a fish and a bird, which is kind of intriguing because I was showing owl symbolism earlier. There's a few bird encodes with Pisces, which is intriguing. But what he's showing you is that the Babylonian interpretation of the constellation was a little bit larger than what we currently have. And so he's showing you the larger version, and then he's showing you kind of the more modern, slimmed down, that sort of version of things. But you could see it's virtually the same, right? In so many different ways. And so their whole line of mythology was that we're getting back to egg symbolism, that there was a golden egg that was produced and was sent down a river, and it was brought on shore, and the fish brought it to its location, and the swallow, a bird, actually was the one that sat on the egg, incubated it until it hatched, and it hatched on this field. And so this field, as I was saying, it corresponds with life and generation, and there's a lot of paradise, Garden of Eden symbolism totally baked into this field here. And so I thought that was worth sharing for a few different reasons. Also, because Earth has a lot of corresponding elements linking it to the number 4. So the 4 corners of Earth, as an example. And here we have what I think is kind of like a microcosmic interpretation of Earth, or the field that we live on. And it has 4 corners. And so they kind of had their own cosmological sort of interpretation of these two signs and the interplay between these two signs, right? So there's as many things associated with Pisces that alludes to endings, but also beginnings as well. That's kind of the big thing about it, is that it encodes endings and beginnings. So it just encodes cycles in general, right? Big cycles and small cycles and everything in between, in my opinion. And how a lot of these things are very much related to water. And cycle symbolism, and a lot of journey symbolism too, and time symbolism. Man, I mean, there's so much to say about all of that stuff in water. It's crazy. But this split stream dynamic, right? You can kind of just, I mean, look at a river that happens to split in two. Same sort of idea here, right? And so you have one river, you know, our body potentially is the main river, and then our legs split off symbolically, right? Or it looks like the V, right, of the constellation itself, but that there's one sort of waterway or one origin, and it splits off into two. So the one becoming two. And here you can see that same dynamic, but just happening in a number of ways. One main vein, and then several smaller veins kind of splitting off, right? Reminds me a lot of roots, and reminds me a lot of branches, kind of going back to the world tree stuff. Reminds me a lot of veins, right? I mean, just look at how our bodies function and work. It's the same sort of idea of main veins, main vessels, arteries, and then it's splitting off, right? And so this is how our circulatory system works. Our nervous system looks very much the same way. A lot of things within the human body kind of have the same general sort of dynamic of the one splitting off, and then those branches splitting, and then those branches splitting too. Go out in the natural world and you're going to see this all over the place, right? So here again, you can see the whole dynamic, right? And so this is just a hand, right? And you can see the veins within the hand. Main veins to smaller veins to smaller veins. And there's a book called the Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. And if I have it here, I'll show you. It's probably elsewhere. But in this book, it relates a lot of Pisces symbolism. I was talking about the cell salt earlier with Pisces, and it was talking about the cell salt that associates with Pisces being very good for our blood and our blood system. And it gets literally into the symbolism of the split streams with rivers, of the extreme nature of Pisces, the fact that it's at the very end of the whole entire year. And so how else would you be able to send blood to the tips of your fingers unless this sort of system was in place? Unless this was like a design that was practical and functional, and I'm going to say has roots, because it looks exactly like roots. You know, the design of the human body and the design of a lot of things in the natural world are very, very similar. There's a lot of overlap going on there. And so when I look at an image like this now, I'm just thinking of that split stream sort of dynamic. Again, the one becoming the two, and then those two potentially becoming, four, and then so on and so forth, right? And so I think that there is a lot of things kind of being encoded within Pisces that suggests that this whole dynamic of again, veins, arteries, roots, branches, etc., it relates to the sign, in my opinion, in a lot of different ways. So again, going back to this idea of one becoming two, look at the symbol for Aries. This is the same sort of dynamic, which is the next sign. It's the one going and splitting off into two, and it looks kind of toroidal in nature, right? It almost looks like the torus field. So what are the odds, guys? I mean, this just blows my mind when I think about it. What are the odds that Pisces, the glyph for Pisces, looks like a torus field? It looks like the cross section of the torus field, and it looks like that middle line, right, is the plane of inertia. It's the ribbon, it's the cord that connects the fish. What are the odds that Pisces looks like a torus field, and then Aries, the next sign, also looks like the top of a torus field, at least. It looks like that sacred center of the torus field being projected and then expressed. It's kind of like a sprout, if you will. Um, and then literally the next sign after that is Taurus itself. I just I don't think that's a coincidence. So if you're going to get into toroidal symbolism as it relates to astrology, I would say Pisces, Aries, and Taurus are the keys. And for whatever reason, I don't claim to have all the answers with all this stuff, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of toroidal symbolism baked into these three signs. And this kind of gets me to another point where there's a lot of things like that in the zodiac, where there's a lot of signs or transitions from signs that encode like huge secrets. And there's several areas in the zodiac where three signs are actually more intimately connected than you would think. As an example, I talked about the watery nature of Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces earlier. Same exact thing, where studying them as a group is really, really interesting, and I think it unlocks a lot of cool things. And so I can't not mention Aries here because of its toroidal nature, in my opinion. I'm sure you guys see it too, right? And by the way, I am not checking the chat, but I will by the end of the presentation. I'll check it out, see what's going on, see who's hanging out. I'm sure you guys are kind of blowing me up with all sorts of good info and other insights and all that kind of stuff. So thanks again for being here and hanging. And if you like what you're seeing too, by the way, I now have super chats enabled. I don't know if any have come through or whatever, but if you want to leave a tip or what have you, feel free. It would be appreciated. Right. So I always have to filter everything through a tarot lens. That helps me with my research quite a bit. And so the card that corresponds with the Emperor is, or sorry, the card that corresponds with Aries is the Emperor, the fourth card of the major arcana. And the letter, the Hebrew letter that associates with the Emperor is Tzidi. Okay. This letter, for those of you guys who don't know, each Hebrew letter has a word associated with it. And it also has like a ton of esoteric occult information associated with it. So this is a very general overview of this letter because you can do like a whole series seriously on each letter and like how it shows up in the Torah and what it means and all of the different deep encodes of that letter. But the basic interpretation of this letter is that it corresponds with the word fish hook. And so it means fish hook. Again, what are the odds that we're in Pisces, the fish, right? And then the next sign is Aries, and the card that corresponds with that sign has a connection to the fish hook. I just think that's kind of crazy. Each major arcana card that corresponds with a sign, by the way, you are looking at like an expression of that sign. So when you're looking at the Emperor card, you are basically looking at an expression of Aries, in my opinion. That's how I break it down. That's how I look at it personally. And so again, what I think is going on here symbolically, it's almost like we go through the watery depths of winter. We are still in the dark side of winter, the night side of the zodiac, the dark side of the zodiac, and then we are yanked out of. To me, it's almost like etheric waters or the subconscious waters or streams of consciousness, kind of. It's more of a subliminal sort of thing. It's underneath the surface. We are yanked out of those waters via a fish hook. And now, once we enter Aries, once we go through the spring equinox, we are now like in the realm of light, basically. And you're dealing with a fire sign, and you're in spring, and the sun has officially returned, right? That's what most people say about it. And so, again, this letter corresponds with the fish hook. I think that's interesting for a whole bunch of different reasons, so I had to include it. Um, and then I just included this little clip art fish hook thing to help illustrate my point. And so I just think that is very, very interesting. And then also, too, I just think about the nature of Aries, and Aries corresponds with Mars and war and sacrifice. And there's like death symbolism definitely baked into Aries via the ram, and just how violent rams are and all that kind of stuff. And beware the Ides of March. March, I think of like marching soldiers and stuff, and all of that. This is the month in which Aries begins. So there's lots of like warm, fiery Mars energy coming at us here pretty soon. And the fish hook to me is almost like an expression of that energy, throwing out a line underneath the water and then yanking out some fish to come back to the light side or day side of the zodiac, if that makes sense. So, guys, fish symbolism, it's so deep. Water symbolism, it's so deep. I mean, kind of like long story short, we come from and return to the waters. We come from and return to this etheric waters. And there's waters above and there's waters below. And we're mostly water. And we need water to survive. And water symbolism is like as old as the hills. It's even older than the hills, actually. And you can even make the case that water literally is where everything comes from. We wouldn't have what we have around us without water. It just would not be possible. So the occult aspect of water, the occult aspect of all of these elements, it's so deep. Like it just goes on and on and on and on. But with fish specifically, there are so many fish deities that were like some of the first deities in various pantheons that taught humanity various skills and trades, and gave bestowed wisdom upon humanity, essentially. um and some of these myths are from the oldest like cultures and religions in the world, by the way. So this is the first incarnation of Vishnu. You can see he's either half fish or coming out of a fish, right? And so I'm going to show you guys a few examples of what I'm talking about here, about these fish deities and these fish gods, which oftentimes they look like they're hybrids, right? And so you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. But it's very clear. The upper half is one thing, the lower half is the fish. And also, this deity is even blue, just like the water, just like water and the night sky, or the sky. This is another interpretation, actually, of the exact same thing. And I'm not even going to get that deep into it, but I know a little bit now about this print. I know a little bit now about this artist and this book in general. And it's by an artist named Picard. And this book is really interesting. There's so many cool illustrations in here. But everything is kind of just a little bit off. Like, again, I shouldn't even open up this can of worms, but I just wanted to show you this as another example of Vishnu coming out of a fish and being an early sort of primordial deity in so many ways. And then we've got Oannes, right? Half man, half fish. Some of you guys out there probably have seen this imagery before. And then more fish deities. So there were 7 fish gods. I believe they were referred to as the Apkallu. And a lot of their illustrations or renderings look very similar to this. I kind of dig the fact that it looks like they're just wearing like fish costumes or something. Instead of them looking exactly like they're supposed to be half fish or whatever, it just looks like they got a fish costume at the costume store or something, and they're just wearing it. And so it would make sense that a lot of important deities are fish based, given the fact that water is as important as it is. But even just seeing these two fish here, it just gives me Piscean vibes, right? And so I just had to include it for that reason. 2 fish. And these are the seven rishis. There's fish oceanic symbolism baked into their origin story. So I thought that was worth including. And also these seven rishis too, and fish symbolism and water symbolism, there's actually a surprising amount of northern symbolism or polar symbolism that's baked into all this stuff too, which I'm not really going to get into. That's not the point of this presentation. But there is a correspondence between the seven rishis and the seven stars of Ursa Major as well, right? And so I believe this is just another depiction of Oannes, but this is a an illustration or painting that comes from the Secret Teachings of All Ages. You can see the signature style that Knapp has, and so all of his paintings, you could just once you've seen enough of his paintings, you know that that is the artist for sure. But you have this fish deity coming from the ocean, saying hello. And obviously the people, early man, primitive looking people, I guess you can say, with their spears and whatnot. Obviously they must have, their minds must have been blown if this was really a thing. And this isn't really the point of this presentation either, but I almost threw in an illustration of Cthulhu and how Cthulhu is known for being dormant in the ocean, not dead but dreaming, and that he one day will return and resurface. And it just makes me wonder, when we're dealing with Cthulhu, are we dealing with a modern interpretation of fish deity symbolism? It's just a random thought. I'm not sure, but I had to mention that, and I had to at least I wrote it down. I looked up some images of Cthulhu, and I'm shelving it for now. But I think that kind of makes sense a little bit. And so you can see that these fish gods, right? Their influence is still seen. And so most of you guys here probably know, but the Pope wears a fish hat. I mean, look at it. Look how close it is. Like, that is the deal. And so within Catholicism and Christianity, the amount of fish symbolism that's present is pretty deep, to say the least. There's a lot of different things we can get into with that. But there's a few things in particular that I definitely want to highlight. As an example, Christ, Jesus Christ, a lot of people associate him with Pisces, right? And so a lot of people think that basically either we are fully in Aquarius, or we're transitioning to Aquarius, or we will be transitioning to Aquarius, and that before Aquarius, it was the age of Pisces, and that Jesus was like the savior deity of the Piscean age. And so he taught people to become fishers of men, as an example. And there's several stories and parables relating Christ to fishing and to ocean symbolism. Same thing with Mary too. There's lots of Virgin Mary symbolism relating her to water, right? And so here you can see, and this is of course like a modern painting, but here you can see fish being brought into the boat, and then Jesus is stoked because it's a bountiful trip for these guys, right? And he's just chilling in the back too. He's not even helping. But basically, fish symbolism, what I've come to understand is that fish symbolism, as I've been saying, there's a projective quality to the torus field and a receptive quality to the torus field, right? Yet it's the same system. Fish symbolism and the fish itself is both a phallic, masculine symbol. There are instances, if you read in like symbolic reference books and other material, very much relating the fish to the phallus, right? The penis. And you can see it, right? I mean, it's not that hard to kind of imagine. And also, though, fish symbolism is also related to woman, or the yoni, or the womb. And so it's really interesting. There's a number of animals, and maybe even perhaps you can make the argument that all animals are kind of like this. But there are some symbols and there are some animals that are basically like perfectly lunar and solar, as an example, or perfectly masculine and feminine. And I think you can kind of make the argument that the fish might be another one of these examples, where you can read just as much stuff about the phallic nature of fish and how it relates to man, that projective nature of the torus field, but then you can also read about the receptive nature of it as well. And I believe I have a quote here that kind of gets into this a little bit. Okay, so that might be in a couple slides. But regarding the feminine nature of the fish, so nun equals fish, right? And so the followers of Christ, if you're a woman, basically you're being called a fish, and they're a school of fish, right? And so when they're together in a group, and so in ancient Hebrew, nun equals fish. Nun equals fish. So that's one very obvious sort of fish reference within Christianity. And so this is a meme that I made sometime last year. Yeah, sometime last year during Pisces season. So, and so when you're getting into fish symbolism and you're getting into all of this stuff, you kind of have to acknowledge the Vesica Pisces. And I know that's not even like the real way of saying it, but it's how I learned to say it, and it's how most people say it. The Vesica Pisces. The Vesica Pisces is like the yoni. It's an almond shape. It's an eye shape. I said this on another stream recently, but when you're dealing with the Vesica Pisces, and you can just imagine two circles overlapping each other, and then the middle portion is what I'm highlighting right here. And so this would be like a Venn diagram. But when you're dealing with yoni symbolism, Vesica Pisces symbolism, which Vesica Pisces means vessel of the fish. A lot of people think, and this is like a modern interpretation, but a lot of people think Vesica Pisces means the bladder of a fish. Which, when I first read that, I'm like, this doesn't make sense, I don't think. And then I read that that's kind of like a distortion or corruption of the original meaning behind it. And so Vesica Pisces, vessel of the fish. And so when you're dealing with this shape or this symbol, you're dealing with things that project and receive, just like the eye, just like the yoni. So it's receptive. It also brings forth life and everything else. Very much related to feminine symbolism because it corresponds with the womb, it corresponds with the seed, it corresponds with so many different things, right? And here you can see that a lot of Virgin Mary symbolism is connected to the Vesica Pisces. So it's not uncommon to see expressions of the Virgin Mary within a Vesica Pisces sort of symbol. And in fact, it's pretty classic to see that. And so here you see the Virgin Mary, which in my personal opinion, you're basically looking at Virgo, you're basically looking at Isis, you're basically looking at a lot of different goddesses. And then here she's holding her solar child, basically. And then around the Vesica Pisces, you see the 12 signs of the zodiac, right? And then she's standing on that crescent moon. That's also very classic to see her doing that. But this is kind of showing people one of the core symbols that she's associated with, which is the Vesica Pisces, the yoni. And that this is where life comes from. This is where everything comes from. So you could even look at it like the cosmic womb, if you want to say that. The Vesica Pisces is what basically, it's basically the symbol that the what people refer to as the Jesus fish comes from. So all you have to do is literally add the tail there, and you can see that symbolism right there for you. And it's just interesting to me that this was, like, my understanding, the early predominant symbol of Christianity. And so my understanding is that this is like pre-cross, like that before Christianity was so strongly associated with the cross, it was more so associated with the fish, right? And so you have the Vesica Pisces, you have the tail, and there you go. And again, Virgo, the virgin of heaven, the queen of heaven, right? And so opposite Pisces, opposite the fish. So this comes from Barbara Walker and her book, The Woman's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. So here she says, regarding the Vesica Pisces, she says, a worldwide symbol of the Great Mother was the pointed oval sign of the yoni, known as the Vesica Pisces, vessel of the fish. It was associated with the fishy smell that Hindus made a title of the yonic goddess herself, because they said women's genitals smelled like fish. These are her words, guys, not mine. This is Barbara Walker here. And so when I read this the first time, like years ago, I was like, whoa, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So everybody knows the classic joke about all of this and whatever, but on a symbolic level, on a deep symbolic level, it's just like it's an amazing thing. It's a beautiful thing. And so woman has very strongly been related to fish and this fishy smell. And according to Barbara Walker, even the Hindus acknowledge this. And so the correspondence with the ocean and fish and woman, it's all right there for you. Isn't it interesting, guys, that Pisces, opposite Virgo, literally has a fish embedded into its symbol, right? And so that's what you're looking at here. I've heard different interpretations of the Virgo glyph. I've heard that it's it could be a grain of wheat, and I've heard some other stuff that doesn't make sense to me personally. What makes perfect sense to me is that you're actually seeing an M with an attached fish, with an attached Jesus fish, if you will. What is it called? I think the original name is the ichthys. I remember one time in some video I said Jesus fish, and people were like, "Oh, you should be calling it the ichthys. It's not the Jesus fish." Blah blah blah. But anyway, you see this fish attached to the M. This is a direct correspondence to some of the stuff I'm saying, and this is a direct correspondence to to Pisces. And as I was saying, Pisces has a lot to do with Jesus Christ symbolism. And actually, to be honest, when it comes to Jesus as like an archetypal figure, as a myth, things like that, I think he's very mercurial. And so he's seen all over the place. So I've made videos associating him with Aries and with Leo and even like Cancer and Virgo and things like that. So I think his true essence is actually way more mercurial in nature. And so he's more of a wizard, magician sort of figure. And so I think that there's multiple signs that he's associated with. And so I'm not saying that this is just the end all be all thing. He's just a Pisces symbol and then that's it. I don't think that way at all. But you have to acknowledge that that is an aspect to who he is and what most people associate with him, right? And so the Virgin, she created her son. And is that what we're seeing here actually in a way? Are we seeing mother and child? Mother and her Piscean fish child, that is Christ. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but I think it's very interesting. I also can't look at the Virgo glyph without acknowledging the fact that Scorpio also has an M glyph. So Virgo has the M with the fish, and then you have Libra, and then right after Libra, you have Scorpio, which is the M with the little arrow there. Okay, so moving on. So the Virgo card in the major arcana is the Hermit, which I just love this card. I always have. And it's interesting because very recently, within the last, I would say maybe 3 or 4 months or something, I am just now like on board with this idea that the hermit is an aged Jesus, basically. You are seeing Jesus Christ in his later years. And so you are seeing an aspect of Jesus Christ as an old man, right? And I think it's interesting that he corresponds with Virgo, his mother, right? And so you are looking at a good shepherd that has aged. You're looking at a psychopomp figure who has aged, who's now going through a hermetic phase of now tapping into, you know, his inner world and his inner self and getting to know who he actually is. And so this card, sometimes you'll see the hermit like in a cave. Um, it's not uncommon for like shamans and stuff like that to live in isolation. And so everything about this card is about going within. And sometimes they depict this going within sort of journey by him going into a cave, which is like a symbolic womb, basically. But to me, him holding that staff there, it reminds me a lot of the aspect of Christ that is the good shepherd, and sometimes he has like a crook with him for his flock and everything else. And if you just look at this next image here, too, this is another version of the Hermit card, and so this comes from, is it the Hermetic Tarot, right? And so if you look at this figure, look at how he kind of looks like a an older priest, right? And look at what he's wearing over his head, that shawl. Um, and then look at Jesus, right? So now you can kind of see, right, what I'm talking about. Does it make sense? I think that when you're looking at this guy, you're looking at this guy. And then I think when you're looking at this guy, you're also looking at the same figure. And so that's the symbolism that I'm picking up these days, is that the hermit is actually an expression of Christ. And so, or of that archetype. That's what's being displayed here, in my opinion. And to me, it almost kind of, it just seems very obvious now, actually, symbolically, for all of the reasons that I've already said. But Virgo corresponds with Mercury. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And I was just saying that Jesus is more of a mercurial figure. That staff or that pole is very symbolic of Mercury, too. The phallus is related to Mercury. And then the fact that the hermit, right, he's like searching. I think he's searching for his other half. I think he's searching for the divine feminine, either within or externally, you know. And I think that that divine feminine is where he came from. It's his mother. It's the Virgin Mary. It's Virgo. So moving along here. Right. So there's a couple of things regarding the tarot that I wanted to mention here. The classic interpretation of the card that corresponds with Pisces is the moon card. Okay. And when you look at the moon card, I think there's a lot of symbolism that suggests that this is probably the right correspondence. And so you have this opening gateway. This is the Thoth deck for those of you who are unaware. But you have the two towers on the side. You have the two Anubis figures and the two jackals or dogs. And then you have this like opening in the middle. And so to me, it just implies gateway symbolism, portal symbolism, going to the other side, transcendence, also illusions and mysteries, and just a lot of things related to the ether. And this makes a lot of sense for Pisces, I think, because you're also dealing with two fish. And so whenever you see two of anything, there's an implied third thing. I've gotten into this in other live streams, but when you see two towers like that, there's an implied third tower. There's an implied middle way or middle point or axis way, if you want to call it that, right? And so that's kind of what you're seeing here. This is very much like a Kabbalistic sort of Freemasonic kind of thing. And so there's a lot of cards that have twin towers. And so when you look at those twin towers, you should think of the single tower and you should think of the middle way or the third tower of transcendence. And so Pisces being the last sign and being very like murky, um, and being mutable, liable to change, it makes sense that this card would be associated with Pisces. And so the alternative hermetic title for this card is the ruler of flux and reflux. Makes sense with the Taurus field. Makes sense with all of the things that I've been saying regarding cycles and coming and going, or projection and reception and everything else. Because the moon is interesting, because when you're dealing with moon symbolism, lunar symbolism, there's a whole tradition that says that if you want to get out of this plane on like an astral sort of etheric level, that you have to go through the moon first, or that if you're trying to go to other planets, that you have to go through the moon first symbolically. And so the moon is actually a gateway into and out of this place. So if you're trying to exit, you have to go through the moon. And then if you're trying to return, you have to go through the moon. So the moon is has a lot of symbolism associating all of this stuff with it. And so Pisces too. If you want to end the year, you have to go through Pisces. If you want to begin the year, you have to go through Pisces. It's both the beginning and the end. It's a gateway between cycles. And I guess too, symbolically, you can kind of say that about all the signs. But Pisces specifically, because it's at the end of the line. It's the 12th sign of the year. And so the Hebrew letter that corresponds with this card is Kof. So you can see it there kind of in the lower right, and it kind of looks like a P. And Kof means back of head. So it's like a blind spot. So you can't see behind your head. You don't have eyes in the back of your head, right? So there's a very clear sort of blind spot symbolism going on here. I think of like things related to the subconscious. I think of things related to illusions or Maya or darkness, things that are more etheric in nature. I use the word murky already, but I kind of think about that too. And so the thing with Kaf is that this Hebrew letter, which looks like a P, it's the letter that goes further down the baseline than any other letter. So when you're just writing it on like on a piece of paper and there's lines, Kaf should be hanging down further than all of the other letters. And so it's kind of symbolic of what's happening on the underground, what's happening in the subconscious, what's happening in the waters, right? So obviously water, and just think of sea level, right? So if all of the oceans are sea level, then it's land, right? That peaks up above the waters and is what we live on, right? So you're dealing with more of a conscious sort of thing when you're dealing with land. When you're dealing with water, you're dealing with the subconscious. You're dealing with kind of the underworld, actually, in a lot of ways. And I forgot to mention earlier, but a lot of early deities that are kind of like devilish or are considered adversarial were water deities. When we think of the devil now, or we think of an adversarial kind of archetypal figure like that now, we tend to think of like, I don't know, you think of like the stereotypical devil, just like in the tarot, or you think of like a Baphomet type figure, and maybe they have like a goat head and whatever, goat feet and stuff, or maybe they have wings and all of that. But my understanding is that the early devil and the early hell was all underwater, and that before humanity had this idea that hell was just like underground with fire and brimstone and everything else, that the earlier concept of hell was actually watery based, and that the underworld was actually underwater, not underground, and that the devil or adversarial figure, these monsters or demons or whatever, that they were watery in nature, and that they weren't land dwellers, they were sea dwellers. And so so this whole thread of me going on about this is just to say that the underwater nature of symbolism is all very, very much related to like the depths of our psychology as well. We're talking about the depths of the ocean and the depths of all of that. I think of our stream of conscious. I don't know if I've said that already in the stream, but streams of consciousness, right? When we're dealing with watery symbolism and we're dealing with those depths, we're also dealing with our psychological depths too, and our psychological blind spots, and where things might be murky or hidden or what have you, right? And so, for those reasons, I think the moon card does make sense for Pisces. And you can see that there's a Pisces glyph right at the bottom of the card. But as I was saying earlier, there's a few interpretations about the appropriate card. And I heard this other interpretation years ago, and I guess it didn't really make sense to me at the time. But as I'm revisiting it, I'm like, you know what? This actually makes sense for a few reasons. Okay, so there's Kof, just to show you a larger version of it. It's also symbolically one of the things that's associated with this letter is the eye of a needle, which I think is kind of intriguing. But the other card that people suggest might better line up with Pisces is actually the Hanged Man. Which, just like right off the bat, I think is fascinating because we're dealing with the 12th card, and people are saying that the 12th sign might be a better fit for this card. The first guy I heard this from, his name was Daniel Min. His name is Daniel Min. He has a correspondence sheet. I have no idea if this guy is still around or whatever, but I saw his correspondence sheet years ago, and he was making this case that some people have it wrong, and that it's not the moon that corresponds with Pisces, it is the Hanged Man. And so, wow, what to say about this card? Because I'm kind of like opening up a rabbit hole here. Well, he's obviously hanging, right? And so this means that his feet are in a more prominent position than his head or his hands, right? And so what have we been talking about? We've been talking about Pisces being related to our feet, right? And this split stream concept that is our feet and our legs. So when you are designing a sigil or you're creating a piece of art, what you choose to put up top, basically what you're saying symbolically, and maybe this rule can be broken in some ways, but what you're saying symbolically is that you're putting certain things in a higher priority than things that are underneath it, than things that are actually towards the bottom of the canvas, right? And so with the Venus symbol, this is kind of like my classic example here. But with the Venus symbol, you have the circle up top, and then you have a cross down below. And so what you're saying is that the feminine, the circle, more curvy, more so related to life, things like that, versus the cross, the basic cross that is the bottom of the Venus symbol, definitely more masculine, in my opinion, for a few different reasons. So what you're saying with the Venus glyph is that the feminine is in a higher priority position than the masculine. And there are some schools of thought that basically flip the Pisces symbol, flip the Venus symbol and use that as the symbol for Mars. And so then it's the cross on top and then the circle down below. What you're saying is we are putting the masculine above the feminine, which makes way more sense for Mars, right? And so, which actually, in my own personal notes, I tend to use that glyph. I tend to use the cross with a circle down below for Mars. And then I obviously use the circle up top with the cross down below for Venus. And so, as a lot of people have said, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So you're just flipping the energies, right, of the circle and the cross. And so the fact that the Hanged Man has feet above his head and his body, you're prioritizing that symbolism. So to me, that's the first thing that I noticed. The first thing I noticed was oh, you know what? Actually, because he's hung, his feet are above. And we're talking about Pisces, right? The feet. And then the other thing that kind of stuck out to me immediately is the fact that obviously because he's hanging upside down, he is seeing things from a new perspective, and that's one of the meanings behind this card, is that the Hanged Man is has every his whole world has been flipped upside down, right? And so he's seeing things, he's seeing reality in a new way for the first time. And a lot of cards have like this little sunburst or whatever, or kind of like a little halo thing behind his head. And so it's implying that he is enlightened, that this new position, this new way that he's seeing reality is actually beneficial. So he is growing and evolving because of that. And it's actually helping him throughout his journey of enlightenment, right? And so this card, too, by the way, this is like a more abstract version because it's the Thoth deck, but in the classic versions, like in the Rider Waite, right? He's hanging from a tree or he's hanging from a T. Oftentimes, sometimes it's like it's either like two posts with a bar or a branch going between the posts, or it's like a post and then it's making like a T, or it's a world tree sort of thing. But he's hanging from a tree, right? And so this gets into some of the mythology relating to Odin, right? And when he found the runes and he was hanging upside down, and there's different variations on this myth, but he found the runes when he was hanging upside down from the world tree, basically, right? But what this symbolism is of the Hanged Man, it's really tapping into the line of mythology that relates to the idea of a dying god, and that there are a number of gods throughout world history that have died and returned, or just simply died, I guess, or and maybe have been immortalized in other ways, being put into the stars or whatever. But this card is very much in line with dying god symbolism, and how the death is necessary. It's necessary for I think kind of what it's saying, like a deep encode, is that the death is necessary for life to occur or to exist, which is actually something I see a lot in Aries symbolism. I see a lot of sacrificial symbolism within Aries. And the direct sort of correspondence I make with that is the fact that in order for something to burn, or in order for there to be fire, we need something to burn. So in order for there to be heat, something has to be sacrificed. And oftentimes it's wood or whatever. But in the zodiac, I would say that it's actually the ram, symbolically, that's kind of sacrificed. So we need the ram's energy to kickstart the astrological year, the zodiac year, right? And so I've made a few videos about this. So if you go through my playlists and you look up some of my Aries videos, I expand on that a little bit, and it'll make a little bit more sense, right? But this idea of like a necessary sort of sacrifice is something that I think about. And I think that that is kind of partly what the Hanged Man is all about, this dying god. This dying god for self. And then in the story of Jesus, they say that it's for everyone else, right? It's for the benefit of humanity, right? That he was sacrificed for your sins. That's the common thing that's said. Well, interesting, right? Dying god symbolism, Christ symbolism, it being related, him being related to Pisces and Virgo, and all of the things that I kind of laid out there, right? I think you can kind of make the case that there is some of this kind of going on. Also, too, I think that symbolically, you can almost make the case that the astrological year dies to bring forth a new year. That in order for any doors to open, doors have to close. So in order for cycles to begin, there needs to be the end of a cycle. So I think potentially that's kind of what you're seeing here within the Hanged Man, is that he's ending a cycle. That this experience of hanging upside down and seeing things, and look, he even has nails, right? Nailed into one of his feet, and then he also has two nails in his hands, right? Just like Jesus. And so I think part of what's going on here is that he is changed forever, that this experience has changed him forever, and that there's an initiation kind of going on. And you can kind of say that about all the cards, that there's like an initiatory aspect to a lot of these cards. But I think that there's a strong case to be made that this card is closely related to that. And so you're going through a symbolic death, right? Whether this figure actually dies or not. I know I said dying god, but some of these gods come back, like I was saying, just like Jesus, supposedly, right? He came back 3 days later. Um, and so it's interesting that I'm mentioning all this stuff because then the next card, the 13th card in the major arcana, is actually the death card, which that's all about transformations, right? It's all about these cycles. So um, every ending is a symbolic beginning, every death is a symbolic birth, every birth is a symbolic death, every beginning is a symbolic death. And so that's just kind of how it goes, right? You'll notice too that the element that corresponds with this card is water. And then the Hebrew letter that corresponds with this card is mem, which means water. And I have something to say about that, I believe, in the next slide. Once again, thank you guys for hanging out and making it this far. Time is flying, Jesus. An hour 45. It does not feel like that. I, for some reason, thought that this was going to go by just a little more quickly. I'm not opposed to it going longer, honestly. But for some reason, when I was like putting the slides together, I'm like, oh, this might be a shorter one, but maybe not. So this is the Hebrew letter mem. Okay. There's two different versions of this letter. One is open, one is closed, and it corresponds so closely, guys, to the letter M. It's mem, right? So there's two M's there, just like mom or just like ma'am or man. I mean, obviously, man just has one M or whatever, but even the relationship between M and N, very close for a few reasons. But M is very feminine, which is why we call mom ma, and why when you say it's a what I've heard before is that when you're making the M sound or the sound, that it's all internal, and so it's very receptive. You know, it's all within your mouth. Basically, it's not projective. It's not masculine. It's very, very feminine, right? And I have a quote here regarding mem. So this comes from Astro Music by this fellow named Ezra Sanzer Bell. It's a pretty cool book. It's actually it's a short, sort of concise little book about astrology and its relationship to the tarot and the Hebrew alphabet. But regarding mem, this is what he says. Mem represents the deep mysteries of water and all of its symbolic permutations, streams of consciousness, ocean waters, fountains of youth, amniotic fluids of the womb, and undulating waveforms. Mem in Hebrew is spelled without a vowel and thus could be pronounced mom in English, though as mem it also connects to the English words memory and remember. Isn't that interesting? So again, he's saying mem in Hebrew is spelled without a vowel. So it's literally, you can make the direct relationship between mem and mom. And for those of you guys who are really interested in wordplay and etymology and stuff like that, you know that you can change out the vowels too to create kind of new insights, I guess, regarding the meaning behind certain words. So mem corresponding with mom, mem being related to water, meaning literally water, and then also mem literally being embedded in the words memory and remember. Isn't that interesting? And isn't that interesting that all of this is corresponding with Pisces, right? And so I just think all of these relationships are really, really, really fascinating. And so the hanged man corresponding with mem, yeah, that's intriguing. So I don't know. I guess where I'm kind of at right now is that I think you can make the case that either the moon or the hanged man corresponds with Pisces for different reasons. And then also, like I said earlier, sometimes the hanged man is literally hanging from like a world tree. And I was going on about the world tree as it relates to Taurus and then the branches and the split stream thing and roots and all that kind of stuff. So I think you guys are probably picking up what I'm putting out there. Right. I mentioned the fact that the 13th card in the major arcana is death. And when you're dealing with the Crowley version of the death card, where is death? He's at the bottom of the ocean, right? And I was talking about the M glyphs with Virgo and Scorpio, and here you have the Scorpio glyph in the bottom right of this card. And so, and then you even have a fish right there, guys, right next to death himself. Um, but the fact that death is at the bottom of the ocean, it just speaks to the transformative quality of water. And it speaks to the fact that we literally, I believe, we return to the cosmic celestial waters upon death, and we come from the celestial waters upon birth. And the real world correspondence with that is literally the womb, is literally when our mothers give birth to us. In order for that to happen, her water needs to break. And so I'm kind of the opinion now that water breaks when we come into this domain and into this reality. And my hunch or suspicion symbolically, it's like an as above, so below kind of thing. I think the water breaks when we leave as well. And so I'm still unpacking that and still kind of thinking about that and chewing on that. But I can't imagine that it's any different. I would think that it's very similar. So again, the fact that water is at the, oh, excuse me, the fact that death is at the very bottom of the ocean is very, very intriguing and speaks to the power of water itself. And Pisces, among the last three signs, is the only water sign, right? And so I think it's really, Pisces is talking about everything. It really truly is like a culmination of like all of this crazy deep shit, including the nature of water and how much water, how important water is to us and to all of us, and how everything seemingly, guys, might just literally come from water. And I think that there's a case to be made that when we're talking about spirits, or when we're talking about ether, we are talking about another aspect of water. That water is not just an ice or a solid and a gas and a liquid, that there's another aspect to water, I believe. And it may very well be ether. It may very well be spirit itself, that is the highest vibration of water, and that everything comes from that and returns to that as well. So spiritual water. And here you have the last card in the Major Arcana for the Thoth deck. It's the Universe card. And some of the symbolism is kind of sneaky. And so if you study it, though, you'll notice what's going on here. And what do we have? Look at the frame. The frame is a Vesica Pisces. It's a yoni. And then you have a golden woman within that. And so I was talking about the Vesica Pisces and the ichthys, the Jesus fish, and its relationship to that. Well, this shape is also a seed, if I didn't mention it earlier. And I did mention the fact that it's an eye as well, right? And so it even looks like an eye. It looks like they're trying to create, or that they were trying to create a symbolic eye. And then they literally show an eye up top, right? That golden eye that seems to be kind of projecting forth. But then in the corners of the card, and by the way, the Rider-Waite and a lot of other versions refer to this card as the World card, but this is the Universe card, which I think is kind of an important distinction for a few different reasons. Excuse me. And so what you see in the corners are four figures. These are the fixed signs of astrology. So upper left, we have an eagle, symbolic of Scorpio. Lower left, we have the bull, symbolic of Taurus. Lower right, we have a lion, symbolic of Leo. And then the upper right, we have a man, symbolic of Aquarius, the water bearer, right? So we have the fixed signs of astrology in the corners. And then we also have water spewing forth from their mouths and nose. And so it's just speaking to the watery nature of everything. Again, this is the Universe card. It's saying that the universe has such a strong correspondence with water that you would be ignorant to ignore that. That you have to acknowledge symbolically, practically, on a physical level, every which way, that water is like the substance of life. Essentially, it's what allows everything to occur. And again, we just barely, I mean, we're like 2 hours in, but I feel like I haven't even really talked about oceanic symbolism or about much water symbolism in general, to be honest, because it goes so deep that there's just multiple layers to it. But suffice it to say that the last card in the major arcana before everything comes to a close and begins anew with the Fool is the universe card slash world card, and one of the most encoded decks in like history, is speaking about the watery nature of everything, basically, right? And so what you're kind of seeing here too is like an arc as well. I think that that's one of the encodes with the brown. It almost looks like it's supposed to be like Noah's Ark. And so I think that that's kind of partly the deal here, which again, when you're dealing with Noah's Ark, you're dealing with the flood, and then you're dealing with Aquarius symbolism, like I was talking about, and you're dealing with fish symbolism and a bunch of other things, but you just have to acknowledge the power of water. And I think that the universe card, at least this version of it, kind of speaks to that a little bit. And I thought it was appropriate to put in here for a few different reasons. So there it is, right? So there's the Pisces glyph, the Taurus field, the pattern of life, and then water being the substance of life. So we live in a toroidal, watery system. And there's other people who have made the case that literally air is like our water, that we need air to survive, and that we are living in a more etheric, lighter version of what we see with creatures living in the ocean or in lakes and streams and whatever. That we are kind of in a aquarium of sorts, but instead of water, it's actually air. And that air might be another aspect of water. That's kind of an occult, esoteric thing that I've heard mentioned several times. And then also recently, I've heard so much about the idea that literally matter comes from water. And so my friend Lucas King, he really likes to geek out on that one. And so matter, and then you just flip the M into a W, water. And that matter comes from water. And that water very well may be, according to some people, it may have been the first element. And that's something that I like to think about on occasion, is what is the first element? What's the fastest element? What's the lightest element? I kind of like to rank them in my head. But the case could be made that water potentially was the first element, or that, ether, spirit, the fifth element, is just another aspect of water, and that there's more versions of water than we are taught in school. And so I think that that makes a lot of sense for a few different reasons. And I think that some Pisces symbolism speaks to all of that stuff. So that is what I got, guys. So cycles, beginnings, endings, water. Water has also, just because I said that, what does the flood represent? It represents the end of an era and the beginning of another one, right? So there's this idea that you can be born anew, and that new cycles come after the flood or after a cleansing, right? This is why people get baptized, right, in water, in holy water. So anyways, I think that's mostly what I wanted to say. So what I'm going to do is drink more fluids, and then I'm going to get to some credits, and then I will read the comments and see what's going on. And just on a personal note, I really have, over the last couple of months, few months, my relationship with water has changed. And as some of you guys might know who Topher is, Um, and he's a podcaster. He's a great dude, really interesting guy. But he talks about the fact that you need to get right with your water, and that when you get right with your water, you're drinking the right water, etc. You're kind of ritualizing in a way or blessing your water. It goes a long way, guys. And water is very interesting. We could even just do a whole water episode one day, honestly, because it just goes on and on and on and on. And in some of my books, the water entry is epically long. All right, so let's get to credits at the 2 hour mark. Right. So, symbolicstudies.com is my website. If you guys want to support me or you want to follow me online, anywhere, you can basically access everything through my website. So, that is your one stop shop for all things related to symbolic studies. So, symbolicstudies.com. And if you guys appreciate what you're seeing here and you'd like to see more of it, one great way to support is through Patreon. So patreon.com/symbolic studies. I think I have like maybe 27 patrons right now, which is awesome. I would love to see that number grow. Yeah, you guys are just part of my inner circle once you join. And then I showed you guys a little bit of the Pisces section of my elemental study packet, but this is kind of what it looks like. So it's 4 pages, and it comes to you via PDF. And I have like keywords and concepts for each element. I have like the platonic solid, and I have a bunch of other cool things related to each element. And then I have a breakdown of each sign and the correspondences. So there's 2 ways to get this. One, you can sign up for my Patreon, and anyone who signs up, I just send them the PDF, no matter what tier you decide to sign up with. And then the other way is a donation-based way. So if you'd rather just pay for the study packet and you're not into Patreon, you literally can go to my site, and I have all of my payment info, Venmo, CashApp, PayPal, etc. And you can literally send me any donation you want. People have sent, I mean, honestly, the range has been really wild. People have sent like hardly anything, and then way more than I would ever expect somebody to send. But anyone who sends any donation amount and includes their email address, I will send them this study packet. And actually, I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but I'll do that for super chats too. So if you include your email address in the super chat, or maybe if you just leave a super chat and you want this study packet, say so, or whatever, any amount, I'll send you the study packet. And I'm assuming there's a way for me to get in touch with you, right? If you don't want to put your email address in the super chat. So anyways, we'll figure something out, I'm pretty sure. So if you want to do it that way, you can do that. And I can't imagine that you can't contact people who leave super chats. So if I'm mistaken, please let me know. But those are the few different ways to do it. Donation via super chat, donation via whatever payment service you want, or through Patreon. I'm also available for tarot readings and study sessions. So you can email me at symbolicstudies@gmail.com, or if you'd prefer, you can just text me. So 503-893-4606. Tarot readings are $50 for a half hour, and I prefer the half hour sort of thing versus a full hour. Upon request, I do full hour readings, but I think a half hour is kind of the sweet spot. And then study sessions have varied quite a bit, which has been really awesome and cool to see. People have hit me up for like dream analysis sessions. People have wanted to know just more about tarot stuff or like book recommendations. I've reviewed people's artwork and, of all kinds too, visual art. And people have just wanted guidance for their symbolic journey too. And so I'm happy to help in any which way I possibly can. So if that sounds interesting, you can reach out. And basically what I do is I kind of create like a custom little lesson for you. And then we hang out on Google Meet, and then I just go through everything and answer your questions and whatnot. So if you want one-on-one time, kind of like a consultation or whatever, just hit me up. Also, I am available for art and design. I've been a graphic designer for a very long time. I've designed logos, album covers, t-shirts, websites, posters, tattoos, like you name it, sort of thing. And so I call that branch now Symbolic Studios, right? And so if there's something that you're, wanting to create, hit me up, let me know. It's been cool ever since I really started announcing this. I've gotten a couple of projects from it, and the people have been like so awesome to work with. I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have announced this sooner because everyone is so cool, and they understand kind of just where I'm at with my actual genuine interests and stuff. So I think I'm specifically tailored to work with people though who really want someone on their project who has a symbolic understanding of things. And so so if you had a logo as an example and you're like, I just don't want to go to a normal designer, but I want someone who can actually like encode this thing with whatever energetic quality you're looking for, or you're looking for someone to help you formulate a game plan with what I think makes sense symbolically for your project. I think I'm really great at that. I've been doing it for a long time. It's my bread and butter, basically. So let me know. You can hit me up, and if you want to see some of my artwork, I can send you my portfolio, or you can even just look at some of my videos, or you can go to my Etsy and see my posters and stuff. Snail mail. So PO Box 930, Carson, Washington 98610. If you're so inclined to send me something for whatever reason, you can do so here. And then lastly, I have a show with my girlfriend called Last Thursday. We went live last night, and we go live every Thursday. So every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, my girlfriend and I will hang, and it's very much interactive with the chat too. And we go all over the place, honestly. So symbolism and lots of fringe topics. She's an herbalist, so she has a very strong herbal plant-based background. She's amazing. She makes all sorts of products, and she sells them on her website and all that. But last Thursday is our project together. So every Thursday night at 6 p.m. If that sounds interesting, you should totally join us. It's a really good time. I've actually been really enjoying it. It's great. And then she also has a podcast called The Healing Home, where she interviews people, and she's had some like top-notch guests. And I'm just stoked for her because the conversations that she's having with some people are really, really high quality. And so you can find all of that stuff at Michelle's Healing Home here on YouTube, or you can go to michelleshealinghome.com and find her links there. All right, so that is that. Let me see what's going on in the chat, and I will full screen myself as well. Hey, here I am. Okay, so let's see what's up. See who's here. I'm sure I'll see some familiar faces. Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, right? Jake from Loco Listens knows last Thursday is good fun. It is. I I agree with you. I have a good time, man, and you're always there. Oh, Jenny, not B but G, dude, very cool. Congratulations, Jenny. Jenny and Chance, they are a power couple. Chance is awesome. So he has a show called Interverse. It's the Interverse podcast. Can't recommend it enough. Can't say enough good things about what he's doing and all of that. Right. Cool. LC King, what's up, dude? Nice to see you, man. Appreciate it. Oh, nice. Cool. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. He did a super chat earlier. I will I'll hit you up, dude, and send you a study packet. Hey, my Cherie. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for supporting. As always, you are rad. Thank you, thank you. Familiar faces abound. You guys are great. Let's see what else is going on here. Who else is here? Yo, dude, Snake Jones, man. Nice to see you, dude. Snake is awesome. I appreciate you, man. Yep, right, exactly. A Change of Heart 77 says nothing really dies, only transforms. I could not agree more. Snake. A symbolic death is good medicine. Sucks when it's a real death. All right, just checking out more stuff here. Hopefully somebody didn't send a super chat and have a question because I'm just like scrolling through stuff. So if by chance you did have a question, feel free and ask it now. Oh yeah. Light Always Wins says the fish symbolism is an ode to the Lemurian epic as well. Yeah. LC King, Vishnu equals Krishna equals Christ, all the same triune God. Yeah, yeah, totally. If you guys want to hear more about that stuff, the triune God stuff, watch the couple of videos I did with Lucas here, and we get into it. And he has a lot of interesting things to say for sure. And he'll be back, absolutely. Oh, snap, dude. $33. Thank you so much, Cucumber Rakuda. Thanks for the insights. Oh yeah, you got it. Very cool. That is easily the highest super chat I've ever received. That is awesome. Thank you so much. I will send you a study packet. There we go. Nice, dude. Roel, thank you so much, man. It really, all of this stuff, guys, it goes a long way. So I can't say, I can't like express my gratitude enough. Basically, you guys are awesome. Cool, cool. All right, nice. So I'm gonna see what's going on with the newer comments, see if there's anything I can answer, and then I think I'll call it a day after that. Okay, cool, sweet. Leaves of Grass says that she joined the Patreon. Thank you so much. That's red. Nice. Thank you, Mindy. She says, thank you. Very educational and really loved your sharing. We'll subscribe and check out more in the future. Much appreciated. Hell yeah. I don't know if I mentioned this one already, but Hank, Flat Earth Hippie, what's up, dude? Thanks for hanging in there. Great presentation. Much appreciated. Hank knows a lot about astrology too. He could throw down on all of this stuff. Gordy is saying congratulations to Jenny. That's awesome. Gordy's going to be actually on my girlfriend's show, The Healing Home, on Tuesday. He is an owl guy, so he's such a treasure. But I love that guy, and I call him the Owl Whisperer. So you guys will learn. You guys will see what's up with Gordy if you don't know who he is. But his owl connections are red. Oh, sweet. Zachary Vickers, texting you now about a logo. I think I just got it, man. Yeah, sweet. Indeed, he texted. See, I get these texts, guys. Right on. Very cool, man. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, for sure. What's up, Pedro? You got it, dude. Thanks for always being down to chill and hang out in here. So Pedro's awesome. If you guys are in the Portland area and need a mover, I know a good one. This guy right here. He's all about it. Yeah, totally. Pisces and feet, interesting to consider the run on the banks. Yeah, 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 exactly. Nice. Thank you so much for the super chat to Swasi. Much appreciated. I'll send you an elemental study packet for sure. Mindy Wood coming through with 4.99. Thank you, thank you. I'll send you a study packet as well for sure. Thank you, Jenny, so much. 1111. Yeah, that's rad. You also will get a study packet. Oh, Donut. Hey, what's up, dude? So I just did a show with Donut on Monday, and I'm sure it'll come out at some point regarding Illuminati symbolism, and I think we had a fun chat, man. And so check out his channel too if you guys are into conspiracies and things like that. So what's up, J-Lo? J-Lo's super supportive too. Love that girl. Here is my what if from earlier? What if Pisces keeps us in that hamster wheel? Many won't know when to start and stop, so they stay on the wheel from fear. Interesting. You know, actually, I don't know if I have a direct answer for your what if here, but I've long considered, and I probably should do it, but I think I want to do a video about weaponized astrology because the signs, there's so many beautiful, amazing things about all of the signs and the symbolism that's associated with them, but there's also ways that they can be weaponized and like weaponized against us, and they also can speak to some of our blind spots. And so it's almost like a double-edged sword sort of thing where I love the signs. Obviously, I just talked about Pisces for like 2 hours or whatever, but there's also some elements related to each sign that is I wouldn't say nefarious, but I would say that it can be used against us. The knowledge that each sign brings can be used against people, and especially too if you're not acknowledging that aspect of self. So I would have to spend a little bit of time chewing on some of those insights, but I think that could be a worthwhile presentation at some point. Yeah, dude, you guys are streaming on Tuesday. So Tuesday at 4. And then the second, what if the hermit is Joseph holding all the secrets that really happened in that lamp? I don't know. That's interesting. I'm kind of curious, actually. I might go back and rewatch this and see what you guys think about that little section there because I think that there's legs to that one. Yep, that's it. Live at 4 p.m. PST. Gordy Two Shoes. That's my girl, Michelle Sealing Home. So, babe, maybe you can just throw a link to your channel in the chat for people who might want to subscribe to you. Cool. Australian. Nice. Came in late. Gonna have to listen to this one later. Right on, right on. Well, enjoy. Sweet guys. That's gonna do it. I'm gonna figure out how to send you guys study packets. And again, thank you so much. And until next time, I will check you later. See ya.